All right, can we give this group of agents, powerhouse agents, another round of applause, please? I was so excited when I found out who all was going to be sitting on this panel.
So were we.
Most of them you probably know or have seen on social media, out in the world of real estate. So lots of great people up here, very excited about that. You know what I love about these conferences, especially with EXP, everybody's always so in tune about what is an important topic. You know, last year we did a lot of talking about commissions and that industry standard word we didn't want to use anymore, and that's all you heard about last year. And this year, you know, for a couple of years now, you've got AI, and now we're really in a market where listings, how are we going to get those sold? What does this look like with the inventory and all the things that we're facing right now in this market? So I loved what Girls and Grit did earlier, and we're just going to expand on that even more so. So really excited about this topic and hope that you take away some nuggets from this. So we're going to start off by, just talking about that beginning space. Like, what does this look like when I first, as an agent, approach a client? And we're talking about expectations, because no matter what we're doing and who our client is, expectations and setting those appropriately is one of the most important things out there. So Brian, or Brittany, if I was talking to you and we were looking at how do I approach my client for the first time, and we're at the listing presentation, how do we explain or discuss those expectations that they can have throughout the selling process?
Yeah, I think creating a visual and making sure that you're showing them what exactly is happening with the market. I always say market stats, days on market, sales price, list to sales price. Those are numbers, it's factual. There's no emotions tied into it. And I think overly setting those expectations based on the numbers with no emotions, showing them.
Yeah, and that's hard sometimes, right? Because you have a lot of emotions when people are selling a house. There's a lot of things and variables that you might not be aware of. So being able to be in tune with that and really focus on the facts there. David, speaking of that, if we're talking about emotions and talking to someone, how do you work and build trust with your clients through those expectations?
Well, look, my first question when I sit down with the seller, it all starts at the very beginning. We've got to win before we start. My first question to them, and this is really going to dial down the motivation on the sellers, is what happens if the home doesn't sell? And if they give you a plan B, guys, then they're not a motivated seller. If they say something like, hey, I'm going to just keep the home and wait for 5 years, that's probably a listing you don't want to take, right? If they don't give you anything other than, hey, I'm relocating, hey, I want to get closer to my kids, hey, I need to sell because I can't afford this home anymore, that's a seller that you want to take. Right, so definitely ask that question. It's uncomfortable because they come to you thinking that you're going to get their home sold, but at the end of the day, there's no magic button to get a home sold other than price, right? But sellers don't want to hear that, right? So I like to just make sure I'm setting myself up for success, setting those expectations, bringing the trends of the real estate market is fantastic, right? The MLS has the trends of the market. You can look at the days on market. Hey, Mr. Seller, Frisco has 75 days to get a home under contract. And that's just to get it under contract. That's not to get it sold, right? So that's good to bring visuals. I agree with that. Also, something out of the box that I've been doing to give sellers a reality check is, and everybody can implement this, is I've actually been video testimonial my buyer clients. And I ask them, hey guys, as an active buyer, how many days on the market did you start to think like something was wrong with the home, right? You'd be shocked. At the 5 that I interviewed, they said 90 days, 60 days. I had a buyer client tell me after 30 days, they didn't even want to go in person and look at it. I was showing these videos to my sellers so that they can get a reality check on what the market's saying about if a home is priced too long on the market, then it's time for a price drop.
And that can be really hard. I heard a couple of things there with those discussions. We heard the 4 Ps earlier, right? So what you're seeing is these repetitive things because they're important, and they're something that you really want to focus on, and one of those is the pricing. So if we're talking about how to we want to talk about it, it's something important. We want to talk about what their needs are while they're selling, but when it's time to talk about the pricing, Nancy, how do you kind of approach that with that first discussion?
So I think the very important thing is, like the Girls with Grit said, preparation. Like, if you want top dollar for your house has to look top dollar. You can't expect to get top dollar, especially in this market, without doing the preparation to make sure that your house looks top dollar. So that's where the hard conversations come in about the smells, how the house looks. Sorry, I know you live here, but you can't necessarily have these extracurricular activities going on with these smells and different things, Also, like furniture, it's like so important to neutralize spaces. A lot of times when you are gonna list a home, the busyness, the specific colors of furniture, all of that has to be staged. Like, I have a house and it's like 700,000 price point, and the furniture in the house looked like a frat house. And I had to find like the nicest way to be like, yeah, this isn't gonna work. And you have to find creative ways, they may not have it in their budget to stage, but that's where it's better for you to figure out how to stage it. Like the Girls with Grit said, Amazon furniture, that kind of thing. Spend the marketing dollars on that as opposed to keep spending the marketing dollars on listing the house and preparing it, but you're marketing bad pictures, bad photos, instead of just spending the money up front to make it look good.
Yeah, and that's always hard, right? Because as sellers, you always think your home looks great.
Yeah.
You think you don't have as much clutter as you actually do, and then when you look at the staging photos, you can see such a difference. It's almost like remove everything, and then we're just going to touch a couple things here. So that's so important. Brian, how do you approach that conversation with the pricing?
I do things a little bit differently. Yeah. I do things a little bit differently. When I show up to the home, I don't bring any comps with me. I tell them I've never seen their home. I have no idea what's good, bad, or in between. I have them give me a tour like I'm a buyer. Have them give me a list of their upgrades, any faults that they're aware of. So I have all the data. I'll take pictures on my phone. I ask them permission, of course. And then I go back and do my own research. When I do research, I'll actually create a YouTube channel and create a playlist called Comps. And I will record myself on Zoom, literally going over the comps and talking about all the comps versus their home, where the market is. And they can actually see what I'm looking at and hear my thoughts as they rewatch the video. So I'll take that video, I'll send it to them. Look, I'll ask them if they want to be on it live with me. A lot of people are really busy. They're just like, you go do your thing. And so it allows me to be at a listing appointment very short period of time, be very efficient, because they know we're not going to sit down and have a long conversation. I'll certainly ask them questions and find out their why. Their why drives a lot of whether you can determine if they're going to be the right client for you. And then it's a matter of, are they able to sell the home at the price where the market's at? So a lot of clients have really loved that process because they just go back and watch it on their own time. And I try to keep it, relatively short. I'll do research before, then I'll go back and do the recording. That way they're not sitting there watching me type in square footage and make the map and all that, right? And I try to make them 10 minutes or less. And usually when we talk again after that, they're very well educated. They know I'm not full of crap because they're seeing the market right there in front of them. And it's a much easier conversation than sitting down or sending somebody an email with a chart that means nothing to them. And so having to explain that is just confusing as heck if you're not in the business. What does it actually mean? So they get my thoughts, get to hear it and see it. And so it covers all types of personalities, and it just works like a gym.
Wow, that's a really fresh idea. I like that. So as you're going through that process and they've watched this, they're starting to feel comfortable, at what point do you actually go in and really start talking to them in person and one-on-one about the pricing, your strategy, what your plan is to help them get that property sold? That's you two, sorry. Back to you, Brian. After you did all the videos, they've watched everything, at what point do you talk to them in person about your plan, the strategy, and really dive in deeper with that pricing and the strategy for getting their property sold?
Yeah, so after they watch the video, I'll set up a follow-up with them. I'll send it to them via text and an email. And then we'll set up a follow-up call, and I ask them what they thought. Like, is this something that do they have any questions, right? Do they feel like the pricing range and model? I never give an exact price, Like, I'll give a recommended, but I also give a range. And that's where it gets back to their why, what their motivation is. Finding their motivation is key in the entire process. You know, you were talking about that. And you can ask that by not saying, why are you moving? But you can just find out little moments when you're doing the walkthrough. Hey, you know, where are you going after this? Like, some people you don't know, right? You don't know anything about. You know, like, how quickly do you think you want to be out of here? Like, you know, are you looking to sell it quickly, or are you trying to get the highest price? So once we sit down and talk about that, they have that range. Then it's like, all right, I'll answer questions, and are you ready to work with me? Right? It's that simple. And if they're not, that's okay. We have to be willing to walk away today. In this market, not everybody's a good client, right? I mean, there's so many listings being pulled off the market right now because people in our industry are desperate to try to get deals done because we're all closing less transactions. And I think being able to walk away gives a level of confidence that they're also hiring the right person. Look, this is where the market's at. If you don't think it works for you, that's okay, right? I don't want to take a listing that I can't sell. I'd rather let you down today than let you down later, you know, when we're way in the process and everybody's pissed off. So.
Gosh, and that tends to be a thing I hear repetitively from agents, right? Like, they're excited about the listing, they're excited about the new client, and they're just not getting the vibe, right? Or they're making their suggestions and the seller is just not listening to them. They're not listening to them about the pricing. They're not really on the same page with the strategy. So where do you go from there? I love that you said, like, sometimes it's okay to walk away. That might even be sometimes during a transaction. If you start to find that the fit is not there, the last thing you want to do is hang in there and things just get worse. So I love that insight. Now, Nancy, we talked a little bit about, you know, things that you're looking for with preparing for that listing. When do you actually introduce and start talking about the pricing itself and your strategy during that process?
So I also do it after I've walked the property, and I also give a range. I don't say, like, you know, I think we should lift at $699. I definitely give a range. But it's after I've viewed the property, I kind of show, like, this is what the neighborhood's doing. This is where I think we could be if we did this, this, and this. But I also think it's really important to mention when you're at these listing presentations, like you said, don't take an overpriced listing because you're just setting up the seller and yourself for disappointment. It's not going to sell at that price. You know it's not going to sell at that price. So if you take it and it doesn't sell, you're setting them up wrong to begin with. I also think it's really important to let them know what's happening in the market, because I know people are saying price, but there's other factors like job security and what's going on in the world and all those things that have rates that have people not making decisions. Buyers don't have a sense of urgency right now. They don't have to. So they'll look at a house, like I've gotten feedback, and, oh yeah, buyers are thinking about an offer, and I'm following up like every other day, and it's like a week later, and I still don't have the offer because there's no sense of urgency. Like, they're scared, they're waiting, all the different things. So I think it's important to make sure that you're educating the sellers at these appointments of what's going on, because all those factors affect your price, affect days on the market. It's July, everyone's on vacation, school's about to start. Like, August and July statistically are not the best months. You know, like, it's important to make them aware of all these things before they list.
I love that. I mean, truly giving value and information, I mean, that goes a long way for sure.
Yeah.
Now, Brittany, if we're talking about once we get under the listing and we're starting to do showings, and I know we heard some opinions about feedback earlier, and, you know, of course, the A-game agent, right, walks in and knows what's wrong with the house, is ready to prepare it. But in the off chance there might be something that you're starting to hear from buyers that maybe you didn't catch as an agent, or that you're starting to hear, you know, how do you handle that feedback? You know, how are you using that?
Yeah, I think that when I walk the property, I'm playing devil's advocate, and I'm addressing all of those possible issues. The primary's upstairs. In Dallas, we don't like that. You know, if there's an odor or what kind of feedback we're getting, I feel like the listing presentation and the listing consultation is planting seeds to allow me to sleep at night. Because I carry a lot of listings right now because our saturation rate is very high. And so I want to make sure that I'm setting that expectation so I can circle back. Hey, remember when I told you that properties with the primary upstairs sell about 90%, stay on market 90% longer? This is that instance. So I think going back and addressing it in a nice way, I like to use the sandwich method. Some people call me Brutal Brittany because I deliver it too direct. You don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, and you don't want to be offensive to them. Emotions right now for showing feedback are running so high. The sellers are clinging to that information. They want to hear the feedback. They want to try to remedy whatever somebody can say to make their house sell. So I think, being direct and honest with them and positioning yourself in any light to increase the chances and the likelihood of their property selling. But I'm also being extremely clear. I like to use a lot of statistics. Hey, did you know that 9 other homes with your same floor plan are on the market right now? Because that's the truth. And it would take about 11 months to filter through these current listings. Having that expectation and saying just because this wasn't the feedback for that particular buyer doesn't mean that we're not going to position ourselves for the next buyer. So I think being really factual and open and honest to them is really imperative, because how many of you guys have a seller right now that's been upset with you in the last week or two? Nobody? Oh,
Wow,
Tina did.
that's
Oh,
it.
okay. Well, you guys can have my sellers. No, I'm
I
kidding.
mean, I've heard them.
And if you care, I've been in the business for 20 years. This is a really unique situation in a unique market. You have to continuously reassure them. No feedback is feedback. That means the buyer doesn't have the urgency or doesn't want to move on it quickly. And making sure that you remind them of that. And days on market in this current, trends of what we're doing, it means something. You have to let your house sit on the market. Like we have to have days on market. And so just reminding them of that. And speaking of that really quickly, some tidbits that I give people for the sellers is making sure that you guys run an estimated monthly payment or have one of the vendors that are here do it. Hey, how much is your mortgage currently right now on your 2.8%? Oh, you're only paying $1,300? Do you know right now for a buyer to afford your same property, their mortgage payment is going to be about $4,000. So making sure that you let them know, I'm convincing not someone for an $1,800 or $1,200 mortgage, it's for something quite significant.
I love the facts, and I actually learned something new, so I'll be changing my remodeling plans. I thought by having a master upstairs that it would keep my kids out of the bed, but never mind.
Oh, no, don't do that. That's a kiss of death. I just had 3 in one neighborhood, 2 got multiple offers, and one of them just got under contract
Oh, my goodness.
about 180 days later.
Okay, well,
there you go.
noted, and moving
There's
on
your
to
proof.
not doing that anymore. Now, David, do you have anything to add about that as far as how, if you do collect any type of feedback, how are you handling that? What do you
Yeah,
do
for
with
sure.
that?
Feedback is going to tell the seller exactly what they need to do to get the home sold. And so if we're constantly getting the same feedback, and if it's something that maybe we can change, like carpet paint, then I'm going to advise my seller, hey, you need to be proactive and get this thing taken care of. Or you need to say, hey, maybe we can offer some sort of concession to the buyer in lieu of doing that, right? Then I'll go back to the buyer agent. I say, hey, listen, this is what my seller, mentioned that they would that they would consider and be willing to do. Give a $5,000, $10,000, whatever they'd be willing to do, and just see if that will move the needle for their buyer, right? And just try to find solutions and be creative when you get the feedback, right? Always make sure you call the buyer agent and really just see exactly how many homes that they're showing their buyer. That's important. That way you can show the seller, like, hey, they're looking at 7 other houses. Hey, they're looking at 2, right? That means you have probably a good chance that yours may be in the top if they're only looking at 2, right? So use it as a creative strategy to find solutions to procure an offer. But let's say you're getting feedback like layout, location, things you can't change. If we keep constantly getting that feedback, then guess what? It's time for a price drop, because now we got to go find somebody who's willing to pay the price that we're trying to ask for, right? So just getting real strategic and creative with how you use feedback. Sometimes it's not like a one size fits all. For instance, I had a listing on 5 acres, beautiful home, 2 weeks onto the market. We only had 1 showing, and they came back. They loved the home, but it was just a little bit smaller than what they were looking for. And a couple of days passed by, no more showings. And I knew that the home had a killer sunset. So I texted the seller. I said, hey, Sean, send me a photo of the sunset. They sent me 5 beautiful photos of the sunset. Guess what? I sent it to the buyer agent. I said, hey, Mrs. Buyer Agent, I forget her name. I said, listen, as your buyer is still waiting to make a decision, let them know that they can enjoy a beautiful sunset in their backyard, because this house backyard faced actually where the sun setted. So, there was nothing built behind them. And the next day she texted me, she said, David, that is what exactly moved the needle for my client. We're gonna submit an offer, right? Yeah, getting creative, finding solutions. And guess what? The offer wasn't even full price. It came in like $35,000 under asking. It was 3 weeks onto the market. I told the seller, I said, look, your first offer more than likely is gonna be your best offer. I suggest that you work with this. And we did. We countered and we got it under contract and we sold it.
I love that. Yeah, let's give that a round of applause. I mean, for me, it sounds like you're looking at this feedback instead of looking at it as criticism. Like, how do we talk to the sellers and look at its direction?
It's like overcoming
it
the
can come in
objection.
pretty harsh, right? It can come in harsh from the agent, but I think you need to, sometimes if it comes in harsh from the agent, guys, stop relying on showing time to get your feedback. Call the agent, right? How many of you guys leave feedback on showing time or Broker Bay?
I did too.
Exactly,
I was going to
right?
say, Nancy, you were going to say something
But
like
if
that
it
too,
does come into showing time or Broker Bay, ChatGPT, say, pad this up for my seller so I can have talking points whenever we're trying to get this house sold.
Yeah.
I just think it's what you said. You have to overcome the objective. Like, what's the objection here, and how do we overcome it?
And a good question to ask the buyer's agent is, at what price would that not be an objection to the buyer?
Well, that's huge, because we were just about to talk about price reduction. So thank you so much for teeing that up for me. So David, obviously, it's not necessarily ideal. Nobody wants to have to get to the point where we're starting to talk about price reductions. But as we know, we heard it earlier, and I've seen it just with my knowledge of the market, that people are doing them. They're doing them pretty quick, as they said earlier. You know, they're doing it, and a week later, they're doing another one. They're getting a little antsy.
Right.
So how do you approach that? You know, if you're going to talk to the seller, we talked about facts, we talked about days on market. How do you pull that together and really talk to them about discussing price reductions, if it's necessary, and how you approach that?
For sure. As somebody who's cold called expireds for almost a decade, the biggest thing that I hear is that, you know, they never heard from their agent, right? So I said, you know what, when I get hired, let me take away that objection, right? So everything that I'm doing, guys, I'm texting the agent and I'm texting the seller and letting them know exactly what I'm doing. Hey, we're doing this email blast. Hey, we're doing this advertisement. Hey, this is the views on Zillow. Hey, we're switching up the photos on the listing. Hey, we're rewriting the listing description, right? I'm damn near love bombing my sellers at this point. I tell them, like, look, now, Mr. Seller, now that we're in a relationship, now I'm infatuated with you, right? You're gonna hear from me almost every single day, right? So my sellers probably hear from me maybe one to 3 days, right? I used to be the agent that said, hey, you may not hear from me for about 7 days or so until I have an update. I don't think you should be doing that in this kind of market. You need to move fast. Money likes speed, so you need to move fast on everything that comes in, right? So I really feel like I'm having a conversation with myself and my sellers' text threads. Hey, David, how's your day? Good, man. Thanks for asking, right? That's how I feel. But I'm texting the seller every single thing that I'm doing. That way, also, I'm actually hosting open houses more than I've ever done, even early in my career. Why? Are they working? Probably not. But I'm showing the seller, hey, we're doing everything we can, right? So that I need you to give me, you know, a price reduction, right? So it's easier to show them, it's easier to log your activity. And also, here's a pro tip, guys. Set up an MLS search for yourself, auto email for their address, and get notified on any new listings that come onto the market. Anything that pending, anything that goes sold, right? That way you have talking points to bring up to the seller, right? So do that, be proactive with your communication, like over-communicate with them, guys. You can never over-communicate with the seller. If a seller contacts you, like that's a bad look, in my opinion. You need to be reaching out to the seller proactively and not vice versa. So to the point, I'm showing them all the activity that I'm doing, and that conversation is a lot easier. Say, hey guys, listen, here's everything that we've done. Here's all the activity that's happened on the market. I think it's time for a price drop.
I love that. So we're adding a P. We're going to be proactive instead of reactive, right? I love that, being able to show that.
100%, guys. If you do all this, as opposed to 2 weeks, you list it, you pray another agent sells it, then you go back to your seller and says, hey, I need a price drop. Guess what they're going to say? Well, what the heck you been doing to sell my house? Nothing.
I think another thing too, on like Showing Time and Broker Bay, there's a statistics that you can do, and you can put the price point and the zip code, and then you can do like $10,000 increments, and you can show how many showings from 600 to 610, how many showings from 610 to 620, and you send a video. So I always do like a video and I text it to my seller so they can see, like, if you lower your price $10,000, this is how many showings in this price range that they get. If you lower 20,000, so that they can make an educated decision on where they should lower. So you're not just guessing or ballparking the price decrease or improvement that you're doing. You're showing actual statistics and facts, and you send a video. So it's another talking point where you're making contact with them to show them that you're doing all these things. And I copy my sellers when I do my reverse prospecting. I copy them on the emails. I send them the email. I switch it up every week of my reverse prospecting so they know exactly how many agents got this, what it got, what's in the email, so they see that you're actively working. Anything that you can do like that, if you're doing open houses, you know, we've done ice cream open houses, like different vendor things where we've partnered with Tidal and different things like that. But this shows them that you're actively working, and then they don't have to ask what's going on. You should be talking to them twice a week at least, at minimum, in this market. Otherwise, they are like, what are you doing? You know, all the different things. Even if you're just giving a market update on what's going on in the world. I even text them, like Glenda Baker, she's one of my favorites on social media, and she says things like so blunt. I just love her. And like, I'll text them her video where she's like, oh my God, buyers are so picky. If you're a seller right now, it's not your agent's fault. And she like breaks it all down. And I like text it to them so they can see like a different perspective in a different market, that the same things are happening there that are happening here. And it just reassures them, like they'll be like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what it's like. And they like get into it too, you know, so they feel like they're being in the know of what's going on, and you don't feel like they're just clueless of what has she done to move my listing.
I love that, and it is. It's an all-over problem. This isn't DFW. It's not just Texas. It is all-over issue, and you see that when you start to see some of these national agents as well. What about you, Brittany? Like when you're having to have that conversation, how do you handle that?
Yeah, there's a couple of different tactics. One that I've been using, Karen, plug your ears. I see she walked out. A couple of things is ensuring that I'm not taking overpriced listings. I actually just had one where I was going to put them on retainer because they wanted to overprice. I said, great, I'll do that. You prepay my marketing, you prepay my buyer consultation and hourly fee, and do those things. You guys don't take overpriced listings. You're gonna lose sleep. And when do we get paid? It closes. We don't get a dime if it doesn't close. So ensure you have your reimbursables, in your listing contract as well. But I'm pre-discussing to them what the price drops are going to look like. Contractually, Tiffany, you can tell us too, it's hard to hold them to it. I have one right now that in the listing agreement it says this is the price reduction schedule that we're going to take, and they don't want to do it. So I think having the hard truths, I do the MLS search like David said, but I set it up for my sellers. I also do a weekly, every Friday, have a Canvas sheet that comes out that has how many impressions, how many clicks, benchmark reports from showing time, all the feedback compiled, because that's a good touch. And I'm big about showing them that visual. But I think sometimes you just have to put on your big girl panties, and you have to have the conversation. And I always say any reduction is better than no reduction, because it gives me the opportunity to go back to all those buyers, all the open house attendees. It gives me a reason to connect with them.
It gives you that touch, and I like that retainer. You know, I'm an attorney, so.
I know. Karen, I
What
had
a
to call
great
Karen.
idea. That's cool.
Well, because I told her it's really, I keep a lot of listings, 30 to 35 listings at a time is what I've been keeping. And y'all, it is expensive for photos and videos. And I am a for-profit business. Yep. I give back, but I try to feed my children. Right. So you've got to work smart about it. What, Brandon?
Well, you're evaluating that risk, right? Like, okay, I might not get paid on this. How much am I willing to give?
The other thing that, the line that I've used more and more and more is the market's rejecting your offer, right? At the end of the day, if you're getting showings, if you're getting no showings, if you're getting positive feedback or negative feedback, at the end of the day, you're either getting an offer that works or not. And it's a very black or white scenario. You know, you're either winning or you're losing. And so when you talk about the market is speaking to us and not I'm speaking to you, Mr. and Mrs. Client, because they tend to sometimes think we have commission breath. Like, I don't want to just get your home sold. I want to get you the highest dollar I can do, but I can be Steve Jobs of real estate marketing, but I can't sell a home that nobody wants to buy. right? And so, you know, there's a lot of lines that you can use. You know, it's hard to fish with your bait above the water, right? I mean, nobody's biting. And so you just have to be honest, but try to think of it from their perspective. They don't want to be told. You need to explain to them that the market is speaking to us. Your home, you hired the best marketer out there. Your home's everywhere. You know it. You can see it. You see what I'm doing. I'm updating you. But I can't sell something that's not priced right. And it's a very blunt, honest conversation, but that's what we're paid to do. We're not paid to sugarcoat things, especially in a market like this, where homes are sitting longer and they didn't list their home to sit on the market 90, 150 days, right? They want to get it sold. And so if the market is rejecting the offer, continue to use that because it's speaking from a third party, not from you.
I love that. Now, so we've talked about those price reductions, but let's say whether we've reduced the price or we haven't, we get an offer in, and either it might be a little insulting or maybe it's asking for, you know, a large seller concession. Nancy, how do you approach that when it might be a little painful for your sellers to see that the first time?
So usually what I do is, again, I try to figure out what the motive is and what the objection is to the offer, if it's price, what it is, and try to work the numbers backwards to make it work for them. But essentially, like you said, usually the first offer is normally your best offer. Sometimes it's okay to hold out, just depends on time frame. You know, each house is different, each person is different, but in this market, I try to encourage to work the offer as best as we can. So if that's, you know, concession or reducing concession, I try to be creative with it depending on what the offer is. But again, just explaining the statistics of the market and the facts and where the market is super important because, you know, you can hold off, but that might cost you another 60 days on the market, which if you calculate how much your mortgage is and your taxes and all this, I factor it out. If you're waiting, this is what it's going to cost you.
And I love those tools where you can say very vividly, this is what happens if you do this, here's what it's going to look like in 60 days, and really back to those facts and those numbers. What about you, Brian? How would you handle a situation like that?
You know, the one thing that we have to remember is we're dealing with humans. We're in the people business. And you have to hit people with emotion. You have to ask emotionally, like, responsive questions. You know, okay, so we sit at this price for another 30 days. Then what? You know, you said you wanted to move before school started. Well, what if your home's on the market? We're doing the same thing we're doing. Your home doesn't sell in 30 days. What are you going to do then, right? So get really good at asking the right questions, not just any question, that allows them to answer the correct response, where you're trying to lead them, but it's coming from them, not from us, right? And I think that is really, really important, that human side of it, because it's an emotional process for people. Residential is very emotional, commercial is not, right? And we have to remember that we have to find them and help them achieve their goals, their needs, and you can do that by asking the proper questions.
I love that. So if we could give one nugget, each of you, that's of most importance out of all those topics, or even just something that you think is important for them to leave with, starting with you, Brian. We'll just work our way down. It's just one last thing you'd like to leave with everybody.
Right now, I would say show up to any training you can. Get skilled. Like, all this is great, but if you don't have the skills in this market that you need when you have that deer in the headlight question and you're, right? Like, you have to sharpen up. I'm on a call every morning practicing. I've been doing this almost 25 years. And I've had to adjust with the market and improve and adjust what I do and how I do it and how I say things. And I would say showing up, every one of us are here. We're here to learn, improve, but really practice the conversations that you're having with clients. That, I think, is the biggest difference maker that separates the good from the great in this market.
David?
I would say expect fallout. Expect however many listings you take, probably more than likely, I would say probably half are going to fall out. It just is what it is. So I would say increase your prospecting, increase your efforts. We're going to get through this market. We're going to see the other side of this, just like we did with COVID, right? When sellers had all the powers, right? Now it's the buyer's turn, right? So improve your conversations, improve how many appointments you go on. Get really, really skilled up, guys. Like, I just went on one yesterday. I thought they were going to overprice it. And I showed them all the data. Guess what? That they wanted to list exactly where I wanted to take them at, right? So I would say increase your prospecting efforts. Go on as many listing appointments as you can. Stack your listings, guys. Stack your listings, because you should expect some fallout, but also you just never know when those listings are going to sell.
I would say be direct with your sellers. Make sure that you are telling them exactly where it needs to be. And remember, like, you're the professional. That's why they're hiring you. This is you're the boss. You're the realm. Yes, it's their home, but if they want a professional and they want to move it, they need to listen to you. Otherwise, the relationship isn't going to work. So you're essentially wasting your time. And so it's so important to be direct and make sure that you're showing them your value and why they should hire you and listen to you.
I would say control what you can control. We can control how much we practice. We can control, the conditions to some of the property, how many listing appointments we go on. All of those things. Don't focus on the market. The market is what it is. We're in charge of us, and we can control ourselves. And I like what David said, because David and I compete a lot. How many listings have I taken from you, David? I'm just kidding. 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 But make sure you practice, and increase your numbers. Focus on the income-producing activities and making yourself show up right.
I love that. So what we know is a challenging market, but it's also an opportunity for the skilled agents, or if you're not, to get more skilled, to communicate with your clients. And I just want to get an opportunity to give everybody a round of applause, these powerhouse agents. Thank y'all so much.